Hi guys, welcome to lesson 7, the lymphatic system, which is essentially, we're going to be talking about immunity. So the learning objectives for this lesson are as follows. You'll be able to understand the role of the lymphatic system, identify the components of the lymphatic system, understand the purpose of lymph, understand the rationale behind kinesiotaping, identify the common infections associated with the lymphatic system, and understand the adaptive immune response. So the fundamentals we need to know. The lymphatic system is a network of tissues and organs that helps rid the body of toxins, waste, and other unwanted minerals or materials. The primary function is to transport lymph, which is a fluid containing infection-fighting white blood cells around the body. There are roughly 600 lymph nodes in the body that constantly monitor and filter the lymph to remove these toxins, waste, and other pathogens. The distribution network of the immune system works alongside the bacteria, or to fight the bacteria, viruses, and any unwanted substance that make their way into the body. And the lymphatic system is considered the most important body system by Ayurvedic medicine, which considers it to be the water of life. It's part of the immune system. It maintains fluid balance and plays a role in absorbing fats and fat-soluble nutrients. Lymph nodes can be infected. This is a condition known as lymphadenitis. So lymph nodes are essentially what trap the bacteria and viruses to stop you from getting sick. Now with this picture here, if you need to pause the slide and zoom in, you're more than welcome to. I just couldn't fit it in any more onto our page, but if you do want to have a look, feel free to do that. The lymphatic system organs, as you can see here, we've got the tonsils, the lymph nodes, the thymus, and the spleen. So lymph is a clear colourless fluid. Comes from the Latin word lympha, meaning connected to water, going back to the Ayurvedic of water of life. Plasma in the blood leaves the body cells once it has delivered its nutrients and removed debris. Most of the fluid then returns to the venous circulation through venules and continuing through venous blood. The remainder becomes lymph. So some plasma eventually becomes lymph once it's finished doing what it needs to do. Lymphocytes produce antibodies to things to kill or fight off microorganisms and bacteria, infections, to stop them from spreading around the rest of your body. Lymphoma refers to cancer of the lymph nodes, as you can see up here on the top right of the diagram. This occurs when lymphocytes grow and multiply uncontrollably, and this may eventually lead to them metastasizing around the rest of the body, meaning they've spread to other areas. Within the lymphatic system, then we've got the spleen and the thymus. So the spleen is the biggest lymphatic organ. It acts as a blood filter, controlling the amount of red blood cells and blood storage in the body, but it also helps us to fight infection through the creation of those lymphocytes that we've just talked about. You can see where the spleen is here on the right hand side, in the center of the torso, just to the right. The thymus produces what we call progenitor cells, which mature into T cells, which it's the body's immune system. It fights off those foreign invaders. T cells created by the thymus also help other organs in the immune system to grow properly and function optimally. The tonsils, probably the one we're more knowledgeable about, because a lot of us have had tonsil problems like tonsillitis or glandular fever, or even strep throat, throat infections, all that sort of thing. And tonsils are essentially there to stop germs entering the body through the mouth and the nose. They contain lots of white blood cells that kill germs, and they're covered in something called pink mucosa. And running through the mucosa of each tonsil are pits called crypts, which you can see here where they cave in on this picture. So lymph is, we said, was a fluid, and it's a fluid that is made up of a mixture of water, proteins, immune system components, waste products, and other remnants of cell metabolism. So there's all sorts of stuff going on there. There's a lot of viruses and things you don't want in there at the same time. So the purpose of the lymphatic system is to return the fluid from the tissues to the central circulation. The lymph nodes filter that lymph to identify and combat infection to produce those T cells. In the event of an infection, it becomes swollen in response. A common example of lymphatic disease is EBV, Epstein-Barr, which is very closely linked to glandular fever and is often the precursor to glandular fever, otherwise known as kissing disease. And if you've ever had glandular fever or you know someone who has, I know there's a guy in our school who was off school for 9 months because he had such a bad flare up with his tonsils that he essentially missed a whole year of school. It really knocked his immune system for 6, and he was bedbound for most of that time. Moving on to lymphatic drainage. This is a specialized massage assisting the maintenance of the body's fluid, blood circulation, and immune system mechanisms. The movements are a series of gliding, compressing, and stretching and cupping motions. It's very popular within massage circles. It's different to a sports massage, which tends to be a bit deeper. This lymphatic drainage tends to be quite relaxing and light to just try and stimulate the movement of lymph out of the body, draining it away from the area that is infected. It's done with light rhythmic movements without massage oil, and it's supposed to avoid compressing the vessels, allowing the lymph to move through the other tissues and lymph nodes. It follows a specific sequence over the body to avoid trapping lymph into an area, so it's going to be from bottom to top or top to bottom, depending on where the main area of concern is, and it's really just trying to get that flow of water. It goes back to that saying of water that is moving is life, water that is stagnant and still is toxic. So you wouldn't drink water from a pond, but you would drink water from a stream. A stream tends to be cleaner. Still water attracts dirt and viruses and bacteria because of the stagnation. It's the same with the lymphatic drainage. One of those pictures where you want to zoom in again. Apologies, I couldn't get it any bigger. Now, with lymphatic drainage, one of the dangers is that you may develop acute flu-like symptoms for a few days afterwards. This is because your body has essentially trapped the viruses and the bacteria that were dormant, and you were asymptomatic up until that point. Massage can then trigger the activation of these viruses and bacteria, or even just moving them can release them into your system, and they're now awake again, causing acute illness. This is more common around the pectorals and the groin, like the axillary lymph nodes and the inguinal lymph nodes. So if you've ever had massage, you might sometimes feel ill, and some people are more susceptible to it than others, and now I'm quite susceptible to it. So in my case, I never present symptoms of sickness. I say never, probably once every 5 years I get sick, and I've shrugged it off within a few days. But I have acutely been sick every time I've had a massage after intense bouts of training, because those bacteria and viruses are trapped and they've been released into the rest of my body. Okay, so another popular method for lymphatic drainage is kinesiotaping. So kinesiotape is made from a combination of cotton, spandex and adhesive. Traditional athletic tape is just cotton. So kinesiotape has extra stretching capability that allows you to really get better proprioceptive feedback from your skin and the other proprioceptors around your body. It can stretch up to 40% of its original length while retaining its elasticity, providing support without hindering your body's movements. So when I've got it on here, I was actually trying to correct a slight kyphosis and rounding the shoulders. Stretching the tape allowed me to pull my shoulders back, which essentially allowed me to focus on that new position. My brain was now focusing on the new position, so rather than slouching forwards, it was more interested in feeling where the tape wanted me to be. The kinesiotape works by lifting the skin from the tissues below it, the fascia, the muscles and the other connective tissues, pulling you into place of a desired position or form. Tape causes compression or decompression of these areas, supposedly allowing it to alter the pain signals or the feeling signals to the brain, as I've just alluded to. Here we have a couple of examples of kinesiotape. You can see here the spider tape that's come in the pre-formatted preset shapes on the left, and we have the self-cut ones that are on the right where you can mold into your own shape and position. Now applying kinesiotape to an inflamed or swollen area will create space between the top layer of the skin and the underlying tissues. This space then creates a pressure gradient between the area and the surrounding tissues, allowing fluid to move into the lymphatic vessels emanated from the body, which is otherwise known as the lymphatic drainage. Enhanced muscle activation will increase the muscle pump, pushing more fluid through the vessels, and this inadvertently causes the swelling to go down, relieving pain, whilst also accelerating the healing process. So very good for lymphatic drainage of the fluid in the event of injury, but also very useful for psychologically making the individual feel better because their brain tends to focus on the tape rather than the pain itself. So we can maintain fluid balance, and return excess fluid and proteins from the tissues that can't be returned through the blood vessels as well. So fluid is found in the tissue spaces and cavities in the tiny interstitial spaces. These are then reached by the smallest blood and lymph capillaries. As you can see here on this picture, you've got the wall of lymphatic capillary at the top, the lymph vessels, the tissue cells and the tissue fluid. So within all this process, you've got 90% of plasma will reach the tissues from the arterial blood capillaries, is returned by the venous capillaries back along the veins. So remember, veins are primarily return structures. The remaining 10% is drained back by the lymphatics. On the average day, the average person, obviously this will vary from person to person, bigger people more, smaller people less. The average person being about 5'10" for a man and 5'4" for a woman is around 3 litres per day. And this includes proteins that are too big to be transported via the blood vessels themselves. So when it comes to absorption, most fats are absorbed in the GI tract, or most fats absorbed from the GI tract are taken up in the small intestine, which is specially adapted by the lymphatic system. The system has tiny what we call lacteals in the part of the intestine that form part of what we call the villi. They kind of look like finger-like protruding structures, and they're produced by tiny folds in the absorptive surface of the gut. So our intestines and our gut are very important for the lymphatic system to do its job. The lacteals absorb fats and fat-soluble vitamins to form something called chyle, which is a milky white fluid that you can see in this jar here. Chyle contains lymph and free fatty acids. That's why it looks a little bit fatty as well. There's a thickness to it. And what they do is deliver nutrients indirectly when it reaches the venous blood circulation. The remaining nutrients are taken up by the blood capillaries. Okay, so immunity. So this is obviously what we're really getting to the nitty-gritty of this now. So our bodies are constantly exposed to potentially hazardous microorganisms such as infections. The body's first line of defense involves physical skin or barriers such as skin, toxic barriers such as stomach acid, and friendly bacteria in the body which are probiotics. So these are the three key prongs or three parts of the trident that make up our immune system. So the skin stops things from getting in from the outside. It acts as a physical barrier. Once something is ingested through or digested, the stomach will kill off what it can with the help of the probiotics in the intestines and the guts as well. So think of that as your three-pronged approach to your body fighting off foreign invaders. Also think if a wound gets infected, that the skin is pierced, that infection can set in and spread to other parts, and depending on how bad it is, in some cases you can end up with things like gangrene, where you'll end up having your leg amputated because it will spread to the rest of your body. So let's not underestimate the important role of these three things. So pathogens will still get through from time to time despite these defences. So when this does happen, the lymphatic system enables our immune system, so remember they work hand in hand, then they enables it to respond accordingly. Now, if the immune system is not able to fight off these microorganisms or pathogens, they can be harmful or fatal. We already mentioned gangrene there, for example. So many infected or many different immune cells and special molecules work together to fight off these pathogens. An example of that being salmonella or E. coli that you might get as a type of food poisoning. Obviously it doesn't work, and the food poisoning components for pathogens win, then you're going to get very sick. We then have the adaptive immune response, which is what that process we've just talked about really is. So it's a 5-step process, and it starts off with the lymphatic system producing the lymphocytes. The lymphocytes then travel to the lymph nodes. They're filtered by the lymph nodes to form antibodies, and then the activated lymphocytes spread around the body, triggering the immune process or immune response. So it's a 5-stage adaptive immune response. An example of this would be swollen glands as a reaction to an infection. The lymph nodes will react when a foreign body is presented to the immune cells through the lymph that is drained from the infected tissue. So things like tonsils perhaps, or lymph nodes, or the inguinal node around the groin area. Or you could have direct infection of the lymph nodes themselves, where they can become infected and inflamed as a result of certain infections that need to be treated with antibiotics. The thing with antibiotics is, if you use them too often, they can actually weaken your immune system, because not only do they wipe out the foreign bad invaders, they also wipe out a lot of your natural immunity. So if you use antibiotics too often, you end up with weakened or slower immune response in the future, and overuse of antibiotics has been shown to lead to an impaired immune system, leaving you susceptible to more illness, disease and infection later. So it's really advisable to avoid antibiotics unless absolutely necessary. There are going to be some things where you absolutely need them, but previously doctors would be given out for things like mild chest infections that could have been resolved naturally by the patient in a week or two, and this would just make them more susceptible to these infections in the future and when something more severe or serious did occur, their body would be very shut down and unable to deal with the foreign invader, leaving them very sick. So we want to be able to just manage the way we use antibiotics. There is a place for them, but it's more important for us to build our immunity ourselves and try and fight things off and allow our bodies to build the antibodies and trigger the adaptive immune response wherever possible. Some other common infections are glandular fever, tonsillitis and pharyngitis. So glandular fever is a viral infection that causes swelling, a sore throat and fatigue. It's very serious, or it can be very serious. I know a guy when I was in high school that was in my school year, and he was off for 9 months with glandular fever, and his glands had swollen to the size of a golf ball on the back of his neck. Tonsillitis occurs when the lymph nodes are fighting infection, usually viral, but they can be bacterial on occasion. And pharyngitis, so the pharynx is sometimes called strep throat, is a bacterial infection caused by group A streptococcus bacteria, mouthful that one, and it can cause lymph nodes to swell as well. Okay, so summary of the lymphatic system. This is a shorter lesson on the basis that it's one of the systems in the body that's still under researched, and we don't know as much about it as we do as something like the nervous system or the hormonal system. We have limited knowledge in that sense of what it does and how it works, and the importance of it is becoming more apparent as time goes on, especially with holistic practicing and practitioners from various fields being a little bit more open-minded and having better technology and funding to be able to do more studies into these areas. The importance of it is becoming more well known, which is only a good thing. Okay, so a quiz to recap the section as usual. Question 1. What is the primary function of the lymphatic system? Question 2. Roughly how many lymph nodes are there in the body? Number 3. Name the condition when lymph nodes become infected. Number 4. Name the 4 lymphatic system organs. 5. Describe the role of the thymus. 6. Which gland stops bacteria and viruses getting in through the mouth and the nose? Number 7. What type of tape is sometimes used to assist with lymphatic drainage? Number 8. What is the second stage of the adaptive immune response? Number 9. Name 3 common lymph infections. And number 10. What organ provides the body's first line of defense to bacteria and viruses? So if you need to pause, that's fine, write them down. You can press play again when you're ready to move on. Okay, so the answers to those questions are as follows. The answer to number 1 is the transportation of lymph. 2 is 600. 3 is lymphadenitis. Question 4 is 4 answers here, so spleen, tonsils, lymph nodes and thymus. Number 5, the production of progenitor cells and assistance in organ growth. Number 6 is tonsils. Number 7 is kinesiotape. Number 8, lymphocytes travel to the lymph nodes. Number 9, tonsillitis, glandular fever and pharyngitis. And number 10 is the skin. Okay, so to recap the session, we're going to revisit the objectives from the beginning of this lesson. So you're now able to understand the role of the lymphatic system, identify the components of the lymphatic system, Do you understand the purpose of lymph? Do you understand the rationale behind kinesiotaping? Are you able to identify the common infections associated with the lymphatic system? And are you able to understand the adaptive immune response? And with that, the 5 stages that come with it. Okay, so that's the end of this lesson. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's one that not a lot of people get taught, and it's one of them that we've added in. With regards to your theory assessments, you won't actually get anything in there about your lymphatic system. We put this in there for further knowledge, to as our way of kind of adding in a unit that we thought would be useful. So in terms of revision, it'd be good for your own benefit, and it will help you to understand the body better as a whole. But in terms of specifically revising for your exam, you don't need to go through it to the same degree. So I hope you've enjoyed the lesson, guys. Any questions, do drop us an email, or if you're on the support system, feel free to speak to your mentor, and we'll see you for the next lesson.